Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. Today on Sue's Healthy Minutes, I'll be talking to my special guest, Maren Latham. Her story is quite different than most of the guests I've interviewed, but one I think will encourage many of you listening and will be worth encouraging others to listen as well. I actually got connected with Maren through a question she sent into Bread Beckers, which was forwarded to me. Most people who share their It's the Bread stories tell how they saw immediate health benefits and almost instant relief from often debilitating health issues. But Maren's experience was a little different. So for me, it began with an email. Maren wrote, "Hello there. I just began listening to Sue Becker online and bought a mill, and this week began milling my own bread. It tastes amazing. I just have a quick question. Is it normal to feel a bit sick eating this bread at first? I have no bread allergies at all and have eaten pretty healthy for years, but I have found I feel a little bit queasy and with a slight headache, and even a bit shaky and weak. It actually feels a lot like when I have done a cleanse or a longer fast. Is this pretty normal? Thanks so much, and God bless." To which I replied to Maren's email. I have not heard of anyone experiencing nausea after eating the bread, unless, of course, they had significant bowel issues. The increased fiber found in the bread could cause some extra peristalsis in your intestines, which could, of course, make you feel a little bit queasy, but probably more like you need to go to the bathroom. But grains are a bit detoxifying, and queasiness with a headache certainly sounds more like what is happening. All of this should resolve if it is indeed from the increased fiber and detoxifying effects from the bread. Have you started taking any new supplements or eating anything new that could be causing this? People often forget that they started a couple of new things at once. I realize it's been a few days since you emailed. How are you reacting now? It is her reply to this question that caused me to reach out to her to ask if she would share her experience. So, Maren, welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes, and thank you for being willing to share your story. Before we get to your story, would you please just share a little bit about yourself and how you first heard about Bread Beckers? You mentioned to me that you actually had a good story about how you came to hear about Bread Beckers. Now, unlike other It's the Bread stories, you actually experienced a slight adverse reaction. Would you please share your experience?
Oh, thank you so much, Sue. It's my pleasure to talk to you. So like so many other people, I have kind of grown up with the whole low carb, no carb, try not to eat bread, the idea that bread's really bad for you. And I've just really always tried to be healthy. And more recently, I've gotten into intermittent fasting. I'm 42 years old, and I have found that since I was about 38, I'm just sort of gaining weight a little bit more easily. And so I thought that intermittent fasting would help. But it just became so complicated, so many people saying different contradictory things, and so many different contradictory things about what's a good food, what's a bad food. Like you should go full carnivore or full vegetarian. And all of that just seemed wrong. And then with the intermittent fasting and a woman's cycle, it was getting more and more complicated. Like you need to track exactly where you're at in your cycle. And you should be eating these certain foods at this time of the week. And then at this time of the week, switch to these other foods. I was just feeling really overwhelmed by all of it and thinking like, I don't think that I should live like my life is a chemistry experiment. Like it's not the way I want to live. It's not the way I want to eat.
Right.
And then I was looking more into like a lot of people online were talking about the carnivore and how much like benefit they've received from it. And I just thought that can't be right. I can't imagine just eating meat. Like that seems very animalistic.
Yeah.
And I was just confused. And I was cleaning my kitchen one day and I thought to myself, all of this has to do with evolution. Like,
yes.
It's all this like idea about cavemen and or like paleo man, all the paleo diet.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, what am I basing my health choices on? The theory of evolution, which I don't even believe in. So, and that's not coming from a place of ignorance. I have looked into that quite a bit and I don't believe in evolution. Right. And so then I thought, I wonder what God says about all of this. And so I thought, I wonder if there's such a thing as like, I don't know, a Bible diet or like biblical eating. There must be, like somebody must have figured this out. So that's what I started. I thought, I'm just going to put all this other stuff aside because it's all contradictory. It's all confusing. It's making me crazy. And I just didn't feel like that's the way you're supposed to, like God doesn't want you to be that distraught by everything and to like have to be so, I think it should just be more natural than that. But on the other hand, like if you just sort of go with the flow, you're not going to be very healthy either, like with the way people generally eat. So as soon as I turned my attention to this idea of like biblical eating, I hit the jackpot. There was so much good information. And as soon as you turn your attention that way, you immediately start hearing about bread and milling your own bread and getting a mill. And I just was so happy when I started learning about all of this because it was like, it doesn't make any sense that, Jesus is the bread of life, but we can't eat it. We can't eat bread because it's as bad as like crack cocaine. Like that doesn't make any sense. God wouldn't have compared himself to something that was so bad for us. Now, I have to say that about 10 years ago, I had heard about milling your own bread, but I didn't understand at that time. Like, I thought that if you milled your own flour, and made your own bread, it just made bread kind of neutral instead of bad for you. Yeah. I had no idea that it was like the most ultimate health food. In fact, it's like the fuel that your body is made to consume because God made us, right? So
yes, I love that.
Yeah, so what I thought was it just made bread neutral. So at least it's not bad for you, but I didn't understand like what a huge benefit it was. So therefore I didn't really get into it. I just sort of knew about it in the back of my mind. But as soon as I started, it seems like there's just more information about it now, like 10 years later. So many good people doing great work. And then that's how I found out about you. And I listened to, what was it? The Bread of Idleness.
Uh-huh.
I listened to that about 4 times and sent it to my parents and was just so excited and talked to my husband about like, can we please buy a mill? And so I'm in Canada and it was just like, there's more bread stuff, it seems like in the States, but the exchange rate and everything, I had to just order it here. Yeah. So I was able to find a mill and it's only been 1 month. I can't believe it's only been a month. So 1 month ago, the mill arrived and, night I made my first batch of bread.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. I just couldn't wait. And it was like,
that sounds like me. As soon as the meal came, I made my first bread and
I know it's late at night. Yeah. I'm like, I don't care. I'm making I'm doing it right now.
So unlike so many other bread stories that I hear, you actually, and they are like immediate health benefits, but you actually experience a slight adverse reaction, if we want to call it that. So would you share about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So that night, as soon as I ate the bread, I would say like an hour later, I felt a little bit sick. And I was getting into bed and I thought, well, this can't be the bread. Maybe it's something else. But then the next morning I was really excited to like have some more. And I felt sick. I felt like that queasy, headachy, shaky. And I would say about like the third or the fourth day, it was the worst day. I pretty much just laid on the couch. Probably that was the point that I wrote you an email saying like, is this normal? Because I knew it was the bread. I knew because there's nothing else that I had changed, and it was sort of an immediate reaction. But my sense, even like, I couldn't also find I couldn't find anybody talking about it making them sick. It was the same thing. Everybody's just like, it's amazing immediately. And like my parents had immediate benefits, and I was so happy to hear about that. And I just couldn't find any information about people kind of feeling sick from it. So that's why I thought I'm just going to see if like Sue Becker will answer me. So I sent an email. I actually didn't know if I'd get a response. That was very kind. Just asking like, do you think it could be this, like a detox? Because that's what it felt like. Like you said in the introduction, or in my letter, I said that I've done cleanses. I know what a detox feels like, except that normally you have to have been not eating like 24 hours before you start to feel like that. It's you or like a cleanse. And here I was like eating regularly, but going through, which is kind of nice. It's kind of nice not to have to starve yourself. But to be going through a detox. And so, and then you answered and thought that that's probably what it was. So then I thought, I don't care. I'm just going to keep eating the bread, because I think that something is getting worked out in me. I should mention, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but like everybody's different weaknesses in their bodies. My main weakness is headache, migraine kinds of things. So it was funny that that's exactly what I was kind of feeling. Not migraine, but just headachy and queasy. It was sort of like my main weak area was really flaring up. And I just didn't feel great. And then it was so strange. I would say on about the 6th day, it was just completely gone. Wow. It was just completely gone. And I felt great, like really good.
Yeah. And that's, it's so funny when I reached out to you to ask if you'd come on Sue's Healthy Minutes and share what you said, that you'd only been milling your flour, making bread for a short time. So maybe I'd want to wait until you had more of a story to tell. But I was so impressed with your perseverance. With so much anti-grain, anti-gluten, anti-bread information out there today, I think so many people would have given up and assumed that they had a sensitivity. But you didn't. And that's why I wanted you to share your story to encourage others.
Yeah, I knew I didn't have a bread sensitivity. And it just really, I had the sense like that something was getting worked out. And I just thought, I'm going to stick with this. I was so determined. So,
and I think that shows. And I hate it when I hear people they just think right away, oh, it's got to be the bread that did this or this or this, So,
well, in a way, it was the bread, but it was doing a good thing. Like if I had given up partway through, I would never have known,
Right. But that's you hit something. It was the bread. Even though you were feeling sick, it was doing something. And that's what I tell people often. I mean, I think there's definitely a place for fasting. I believe in fasting periodically and doing cleanses periodically, because face it, I think we all, have our junkie splurges from time to time. So good. But we're missing the fact that real whole grains, real bread, the fiber is detoxifying. The fiber that's in there, because it actually does leach out toxins and get them out of our system. So,
this is making me feel like I can kind of not worry about those other things as much. This is doing so much
on a daily basis and a daily basis, without, like you said earlier, you mentioned, without starving yourself, without being hungry, without having to, go on an extended fast. And
exactly. And I have to say about the whole being hungry thing, one of the things that I wish, like if no one's ever eaten this bread, I wish that they could understand this, that it gives you a feeling of satisfaction that I've never felt before. Like you feel so, like I ate it and I feel like, I don't think I've ever actually felt like this peaceful satisfaction. Even if you've overeaten, there's still something that's missing. And this is just like, it's so, I feel like God's love for me so much when I eat this bread, because it's like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to feel.
Right. And I think that's we're missing that in America. We're one of the most, I don't want to say well-fed, overfed people groups in the world, yet we're the least satisfied. We're constantly craving, and I think people don't realize that those cravings are coming because we're missing nutrients. And like you said, even though we're full, I often share about like going to an all-you-can-eat buffet, and you eat and you eat and you eat, but you keep going back for, I just want one more thing, and you come in and you're undoing your pants. You're like, oh, get home.
Yes.
But you walk in the door and you're like, I just want something. And it's because we're not satisfied. Yet Jesus in John 6:35, he says, I am the real bread of life. He who comes to me shall be satisfied. And they knew exactly what he meant. They knew that bread that they would be consuming in that day was satisfying. You also mentioned that you felt like you had more energy.
Oh, yeah, I did. I felt more energy and definitely mental clarity.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me, like, I suppose I don't have a lot of real health problems. It's been more dramatic with my parents because, as I said, I have always eaten quite healthy. The big thing is just this wonderful feeling of satisfaction and just a peaceful feeling. But yeah, more energy and more mental clarity. But I can tell you, like, for my parents, my dad has had really bad inflammation in his legs, and it's almost gone. And this is something he's just struggled with, and they've only been eating for like a month, and they felt it right away. And he's had also such a huge improvement in mental clarity. The story with my mom is that she had this really terrible bronchitis that just was not going away. And as soon as she started eating the bread, she was able to finally, like that night, she slept through the night because she wasn't coughing and coughing. Like, it just cleaned her out, like, so that she, like, all the extra gunk and inflammation and stuff.
Yes.
Just right. And this is like this chronic bronchial kind of problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
And wow. See, and most people don't make that connection with toxins being in your body. I mean, that's our body's response to toxins is we make mucus, so we can blow it out our nose or cough it up or whatever. That's God's mechanism for dealing with that. And wow. And so there again, that's just another evidence that real bread, the real whole grains, the fiber that's there is cleansing and detoxifying and healing. And I just love it that you mentioned that your father's right, inflammation in his legs, because see, everybody, that's a big question I get all the time. Isn't bread wheat? They say, isn't wheat inflammatory? And I'm like, no, the bread in the store is inflammatory, but wheat is not. And they don't make the connection or the disconnect that wheat is not the same as that junk that's in the store.
Right, because you're right. If my father had been eating a whole bunch of just store bread, he would be even worse. I even noticed that, like, their faces for both of my parents look less puffy in a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just thrilled. Like, they're on a small income and they're just so happy because my mom is trying to stay away from bread because it's not good.
Right.
Now that they're milling their own bread and they have the option of actually, like, oh, I could just make a sandwich. It's been so much easier for them to, like, have food and eat.
Yeah.
And like, it'd be so much easier on their pocketbook. And just, it gives you, like, having bread being given back to you in your life as a staple, like it's supposed to be, is such a relief of a burden that we're all carrying, trying to go without it.
Yes.
And really realizing everything that the wheat does for you, it makes me wonder how any of us are even surviving with, like, how do we even, like, the amount, it's amazing that we're even able to function, like.
Yes, because of what they've done to it. And the most nutrient food God has given us, a nearly perfect food. And we've altered it, and now people are staying away from it. And like I said, rightfully so, the junk in the store, but no, not real bread. It's not the wheat,
Well, and the thing is, if you try to do the thing that everybody's saying to do, which is low carb or no carbs, you're just eating fruit and vegetables and meat. You can do that for a while, and you probably will see some improvements just because you've eliminated the bad wheat, but you're not satisfied.
No,
You
no.
can't sustain it. And it's just sort of a sad way. Like there's something sad about it. And I love how in the Bible it says that bread is given to the man to gladden his heart.
Yes.
And we need, it makes you just feel,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Psalm 104:15, one of my favorite verses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My version, it says that God gave us bread to strengthen and nourish the heart. Yeah. I mean, so that can mean give us pleasure and satisfy us, but also think of heart disease as one of the major
Right.
America. And God said he gave us bread and every nutrient to metabolize fat, cholesterol, strengthen the heart, vitamin E, protect your cells. I mean, it's all there.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. When you were sharing earlier about, the paleo, the keto, and doing this and doing that and fasting at certain times and watching your cycle and all of that. Some years ago, I just was reading that verse that says, don't worry about what you eat, and what you're going to wear. And I thought, Lord, is that what I'm doing? And it was like immediately, it was like, no, you're eating real food. People that are worrying about what they're eating, it's exactly what you were describing. How many calories, how many grams of fat, how many grams of, how much this, how much that. And, there's no nutrition labels in the perimeter of the grocery store on real food, real vegetables, because you don't have to worry about it. You just eat it because it's real. So I was sensing that when you were sharing that. And then, of course, the other thing, I just thought of Jesus says, my way is easy and my burden is light. He didn't mean for us to be worried and be anxious. I think that word anxious is in there, too, about what we're going to eat and how we're going to live. So I just love that. But I think you also mentioned that you shared your bread with your brother-in-law, I believe. So not just your parents are seeing good results, but some other family members, too.
Yes, and actually on this day, my brother-in-law, he's going out to a farm and buying us some spelt and rye. That's how excited he is about this. So my brother-in-law, Mike, he says I didn't actually know this, but that for the last 5 years, anytime he eats bread or pizza or anything like that, almost immediately he gets heartburn. And so they came over for a visit and I was baking bread and telling them all about it. And I said, you've got to try some. And so I could tell he was a little hesitant, but because I didn't know about the whole heartburn issue thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, but he was willing to try it. And then he was so excited and he was saying, this is the best thing I've ever tasted.
Wow.
And then he goes, I don't have heartburn. And I said, oh, do you get heartburn? And he goes, almost immediately, I get heartburn. And then he had more bread and no heartburn. And he was there all afternoon and he couldn't believe it immediately. And so, and he was just so happy because it's terrible not to be able to ever have, to pay for it immediately as soon as you have any fake flour.
Yeah.
And so the idea that, you can make your own pizza dough and everything, and not have this immediate reaction. So that was amazing, I thought.
Right. Well, and heartburn and acid reflux are major, major problems for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And, the worldly answer is, antacids, Prilosec, Nexium, those types of things. And what people don't realize is that is inhibiting your digestion.
Oh, yes.
Helping the issue. And so that is great news.
Yes.
And who would have thought eating real bread could change that for somebody and give them their life back. That's what I feel so excited about is people get their life back and they almost can't believe that one simple change, could affect so many people in so many different ways. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, that it does seem to be like whatever it is your problem is, bread will fix it. And you might think, oh, that sounds silly, right? That sounds like, oh, it's just a cure-all, and it's like, but no, each person has different weaknesses in their body.
Exactly.
Manifesting in a different way. And it probably is connected to your digestion and all the toxins you're carrying around.
Yeah. And like I said, the bread is the most, grains and beans, seeds are the most nutrient dense food that God has given us. And I was similar to you before I started the bread. we were eating very healthy, but we still had these nagging little things, And man, when that bread came, it was like, boom, this was the missing link.
Yes.
And I love hearing people's stories and seeing the different things that it helps for different people.
Well, and I heard you say in some video of some sort, you said, how many people have tried, over the years, different things. Are you still doing it today? And then you said 30 years later, I'm still doing this. And I can't believe I've only been eating this bread for a month. It feels like it's been my whole life already. And I would never give it up. No way.
I know. I marvel when people say they go away from it, because I'm like, I couldn't. I take my bread with me when I go, and I'm going up to keep my grandkids next week, and my son-in-law texted to say, oh, we ran out of wheat. Can you bring some in your suitcase? And I was like, yes, because my husband's actually delivering to them while I'm there. But I was like, yes, I can't be without bread. So he texted me back. He goes, I found a bucket, so we're good. But he knew, they would panic and I would panic like, oh no. So anyway, I just love it. And I just thank you so much for sharing your It's the Bread story. Are there any final words you would like to share with those listening? Just anything you think would encourage others?
I would say that if maybe you're worried or put off at all by baking your own bread, like that sounds like a lot of work. It isn't. I'm surprised at how, and also how natural it feels to be doing. Like the women always made bread in the past, and it really just feels like a kind of like coming home. Even if it's a new experience, it feels like, wow, I was always supposed to be doing this. And you really, really feel like you're fulfilling your vocation. I don't know. There's a lot of layers to it. It's not just the physical eating the bread. It's very beautiful. And I would just say, don't be worried like, oh, I've never baked before. It's going to be a lot of work. You might be surprised how much you really love the process.
Yeah. And it really is easy. And with the right equipment, the mill's the key, and you can do so much from there. So, and I know for me too, I had children, I had, a house full, and it was also satisfying to know that I was giving them the healthiest thing I could possibly give them. Yes. And that was it is. And I love that coming home. I like that thought.
And your house smells amazing. So.
It does. I had a friend that would come over and we'd kind of clean house together at my house. And then we'd go to her house and clean house. And we just to have the fellowship and fun together in the kitchen outside. But she always came in and she goes, your house always smells like cinnamon rolls. And it was because I would always do some type of cinnamon bread or muffins or something. And but it was funny. And I went off the other day and I had baked bread that morning. And I came back and I was like, it smells like bread. It's just so satisfying. It really is. Oh, gosh. Well, when I first asked if you would come on my podcast to tell your story, I laughed and because you said, wouldn't I prefer to wait until you had you put it longer bread history or more of a story to tell?
Yes.
So we're going to have to stay in touch. And I will hear from you again, as I have a feeling there's going to be even more to your story. So
I'm sure.
I might sound a little like Paul Harvey here. So for the rest of the story, we'll keep in touch. But thank you so much, Maren, for sharing your bread and with others. You shared with your parents and your brother-in-law and your family, and they have a testimony, and now you've shared your testimony as well. And I know that God is going to use your story to bless others. So I just hope everyone is encouraged today. I want to thank you all for listening, and thank you again, Maren, for sharing your story. And until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.